Well, I'm so thrilled to be here with two very dear friends and ministry partners, Jeff Voth and Jacob Voth. Jeff lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and is a pastor and author and men's leader, professor, speaker, husband, father, grandfather. Pretty sure he wears a cape sometimes. And he's the founder of Cave Time. It's really the most effective and powerful men's ministry vehicle I've ever experienced. And Jacob is with us. Jacob is the director of missions and media for Cave Time, and also lives in Tulsa with his wife and gorgeous baby girl. Jacob has an absolutely extraordinary story as well, and so I'm so excited to introduce them both to all of you. Jeff, Jacob, hello, my brothers.
Hey, Ryan.
Man, it's good to see you and hear you, Ryan. You know, the truth is, when I was a kid, I was a Superman and Batman freak, and I had a cape. And so for you to talk about a cape, but let me tell you what happened. One time I was zipping through the kitchen, slipped on my cape, literally cracked my chin open, went to the hospital, had to have it sewn up. So that day, stopped wearing a cape. No superhero here, man. I am just glad to be, in the battle and locking shields with guys like you. You are two of my heroes. I mean that.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so glad to be here with both of you.
I feel the same. I do.
Thank you so much. Well, thanks for coming on this. We're going to just kind of do this interview style, and I want to talk about this phenomenal book that was put together by our dear friend, Kathy Crockett. It's called Courageous Men of Faith. I can't think of two better men to be a part of that story. It's a collection of stories from several men who've lived extraordinary lives, fought some epic battles, and are really now living lives of deep purpose and passion. And so you guys ready to talk?
Go for it.
Absolutely.
All right. So Jeff, let's start with you. Can you give us kind of an idea of something important we might learn about you or your journey in this book?
Yeah, and the journey that I had to wrestle with, when you see our story, that our story, your own stories, it's not about you. We're not on the planet for ourselves. We're on the planet for others. And so as Jacob and I journeyed together as father and son, some of the stuff that he battled and he went through, I needed to realize, man, it wasn't about me. And when I realized that it wasn't about me, it helped me love him better. It helped me be open to God expressing grace to him through me. And that's one of the things that I had to learn as we wrestled with the stuff that Jacob wrestled with.
Wow. Thank you. Jacob, you have one of the most extraordinary stories I've ever experienced. And I'd love to know, what was it like for you to retell pieces of this journey?
Odd, scary, empowering. You know, it's weird, Ryan, when you're so trapped to something that you are convinced that you're going to die from it, and then to be on the other side, to be well on the other side is surreal. So the fact that I'm even breathing and talking to you two right now is, again, surreal, but I'm just happy to be alive, and I'm happy to tell my story. And the fact that I may be able to reach somebody through it is mind-boggling. That's a miracle. So.
Yeah. Well, I have no doubt. I can't wait for people to be able to read this and hear what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Jeff, you've captured your story in your phenomenal first book, Cave Time, and I have to do a plug. Amazing book. And they can get it at cavetime.org or Amazon. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for putting it out there. And I know you've put most of your story in that book. Was there anything new in this book, Courageous Men of Faith, that you really hadn't previously written about before?
Yeah, probably the focus on, when you're dealing with a father-son issue and you're a parent, you would love to make your child, young man, do what you want them to do. But there's this thing called free will, and they can choose what they want to do, and it frustrates you, and you're, you're just like, oh, but if you'd only listen to me, and you want to make them live a certain way. And that was really rough to go through. But prayer, we prayed our faces off. And we talk about prayer in cave time, but the prayer of a parent. I'm convinced that Jacob, when he was out all over the world doing crazy things, there are people, I travel a lot, and I rarely see someone at an airport that I know. Jacob, on a recurrent basis, would see people who he knew, i.e. our buddy Keith Wheeler, the cross carrier. His recruiter, Marine recruiter, got transferred to the East Coast. And I could go on and on and on about the people that I'm convinced through prayer went and impacted him and impacted his free will and watched him, because we couldn't choose for him. But the Lord is constantly, through spiritual warfare and through, I'm convinced, of prayer, reaching for our sons and daughters.
Well, I know in the thick of warfare, those are the kinds of things that encourage people and make you realize that there is a God watching out for us. So thank you for that.
Amen.
Jacob, you were asked to be a part of this collection of stories because of, obviously, the incredible journey you've been on and the man that you are. And so what does it mean to you to be a courageous man of faith?
The word courage, I didn't have it for 11 years. I might have had it as a kid before I became a drug addict. So it, again, surreal. Like, for 11 years, I didn't have it. And then one day, I had a spiritual awakening, and I feel God gave me the courage to turn around and face my addiction. And what's hard for people to understand that aren't caught in addiction is they think it's easy enough to just decide to stop doing it, and it's not. And I was at a place where I wasn't even getting high anymore, Ryan. I wasn't having fun. I was shooting up heroin just to be normal. I was so enslaved to it. And I didn't have courage. But on that day, just over 3.5 years ago now, I was given the courage to turn around and fight it for once. And I have to use courage and utilize that every day to be able to fight it. So again, I'm honored that my story is being used, because courage was not a word that I even think about often now, and I'm just humbled that I would be used. So, courageous man of faith is something that I think, Dad, you would say the same thing. Never thought that I would be called. So wild.
Mm-hmm. That's one of those exchanges of the cross that we talk about when we look at what the Lord has done for us, and bringing that word courage into your story. I think everyone who knows you now would look at you and call you a man of courage and great faith. So I'm honored to hear that from you and just in talking with you.
Yeah, like, that's new. So when you become a new creation, that was not me before.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been in there when God chose to create me, and maybe it took a while for me to see that, but that was that exchange, like you said. This is the new me, the me that I think was purposed from the beginning of time. I'm glad that I could, because I've got friends that are in the box in the ground or behind bars right now, and so I'm glad that I'm here on a Zoom call talking about courage instead of in some of those positions that I know people are.
Yeah, what great perspective, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, I don't want to get any of us in trouble here, so without any spoilers, I don't want Kathy getting mad at me. But if you could highlight just a simple message to those of us who've had the privilege of hearing some of these stories, or those that will get to read this book, what would the simple message be from you?
Never, ever, ever give up. Always show up. Right? I mean, we read the text of Scripture, and we read about David and Goliath and Moses, and millions of people walk across an ocean on dry land, and we're like, oh, but do we really believe it? And our story is we just doggedly held on. And I say we, not just me. My wife is a prayer warrior. When Jacob was fighting and we were fighting for him, she would go to the places that he worked and rebuke Satan and oil up the aisles. I mean, Lori is a crazy mama bear, you know, and so there were times that she held on, times that I held on, but together we held on and showed up. And I want to tell you, never, ever, ever give up. Always show up. And God is he's a miracle worker. I'm not sure how he does it, but he does it. That I would be on a Zoom call with Jacob, and Jacob knows this. I tell him this when no one's watching. He's one of my heroes now. He's a selfless, you know, loves his wife and daughter. He is giving. And those of you who know anything about addicts know they're very selfish, very selfish. Their whole life is about the accrual of that drug and stealing. He stole from us. All of his family members. This guy is not the same. The only thing is he's not really right in the head because he wants to run across Ireland, and we'll talk about that. I think Jesus redeemed everything except his pain receptors. But this guy is one of my heroes, and I couldn't have said that a while back. So it'll be a fun read when people see what, you know, he was delivered from, we were delivered through. It's crazy. It'll give everybody hope.
Ooh, it's a good word. We all need that. Well, Jacob, being a new father of a beautiful baby girl, I'd love to hear from you. Can you just give me a couple of examples of how, and this is probably a 4-hour conversation, but boil it down, how that may have changed the ways that you think about and live out your faith as a courageous man of faith? What does that look like?
Oh, I don't think I understood the Father's love for us until I had a baby, and it accessed a part of my heart that I didn't think was even there. And to look at her, she's ornery, Ryan. She's wild. Isn't she, Dad?
Yeah.
But she couldn't do enough wrong for me to not love her. And that's how I think I had an epiphany of how our Father feels for us. Like, if I feel that way, there's something bigger and better and greater that created us that feels even more so about us. So whenever I look at her, like, I'm just happy. And I think our Father sees us that way. I do. I really do. So it is, it's like I was born again when I saw her, if that even makes sense. There's just deeper levels of love that I feel from the Father, and what he's teaching me about how he feels about us is it's awesome to be able to experience that in my baby.
Certainly makes sense. I think we can all nod our heads and agree every father and every mother on the planet gets it. Something changes, and that's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one last question for both of you, and I'd love for you both to answer this one. Why should people read this book? Because your stories are in it and they're powerful, and there's several others. We've got one of our board members from Pure Hope Foundation that will be in the book, and several other incredible men and stories. Why should people read the book?
I think it'll give them hope. I mean, that's what there were some times that it was dark and bleak, and we didn't know. Jacob, I won't, because you want to read the book, but it was dark. And we just kept, you got to believe. And so we want to encourage you as you read the book, it will give you hope. And without hope, we have nothing. That's why Jesus is called the blessed hope. He gives us, he is the one that resurrected from the dead. There's nothing, no situation that's too dead for him to bring life to it. And our story screams that.
Yeah, walking through addiction will, as a family, as the addict, it will test every fiber of your being. And I think it strips you down to the core, to where you either have to choose to have hope, or you have to choose to, Dad, cut ties. And I've seen a lot of families do that. They choose not to have hope. They choose to sever the relationship because they don't want to deal with it, which in the long run, I would argue, only makes things worse. But my family chose to have hope, deeper than our religious system, deeper than anything on the surface. Our fiber now bleeds hope. And in a world where it seems like there isn't much of it, this book will help show that there is hope. So from our family, we went 11 years through it, and it just got darker and darker and darker and darker. So if our family can make it out of it, any family can.
You know how powerful that word is to me and to our ministry at Pure Hope Foundation. And there is a pure hope, and I think we all know his name, and that's Jesus. And so I'm honored to be with both of you. I'm honored to hear bits of your story. We anticipate this book with great expectation, and I want everybody to buy it. And go to the website, go to cavetime.org, check out these guys, what they do. They're a force in the kingdom, and I love you guys like brothers, and just appreciate you so much. Thank you for being on and for opening up a bit of your world to us.
Yeah, I love you too, Ryan.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.